a bill, 335 I believe is the number, where he wants to eliminate the inside millage. That's huge. The idea a year ago of eliminating the inside millage, everybody would have been grabbing their heart. Now they're doing it now, and he's getting tremendous pushback. But the point is, we the people are getting through to the legislators at the state level, and we're telling them, pay attention to us. Now, I did have a meeting with Auditor Chris Galloway, and by the way, Chris Galloway has been great with us. He met with our committee, and he was asking, well, Brian, really the problem is in the schools. Where 60 to 70% of our property taxes are going to schools. And he was asking me if we were able to eliminate property tax, funding from schools, would you just go away on everything else? We talked about it, and we said, no, we would not. The Township Association, there's all the townships in the state of Ohio have an association. They invited me to speak to them and I guess basically have a debate on the property tax issue. And I initially said, yes, I would glad to do that. But then they wrote back a couple of days later and they said, well, I'm sorry, this is sort of a private organization and they can't record. Somebody must have told them, you gotta watch out for Massey, he records everything.
That's my hobby.
So when I thought about that, I had to write back to him. I said, no, transparency is the key to good governance. If you do not want to be transparent with the people, I don't want to be involved. So we respectfully declined their invitation to speak at the township meeting. It's very unlikely that we're going to get 500,000 signatures by July 2nd, but that does not concern us because we're going to keep going. What we realize, what we have to do is we have to have a better organization structure so that when somebody from Hamilton County or Adams County or Coshocton or wherever in the state, we have to be able to better communicate with them where they can go and sign the petition. Right now we're sending petitions to them and people are getting a little confused. So we need to tighten up that organization structure and then we will do that. But what's happening is that the legislators are concerned that if we get that 500,000 and it gets on the ballot, it's going to pass.
It's going to pass.
That's what they're worried about. And then what are they going to do? Representative Jennifer Gross, who was on our High Political News podcast, was very kind and gracious. She said, the legislators are listening to us now, and if it was not for our group pushing this amendment, Dave Thomas's elimination of the inside millage would have never happened. So those are I take those as wins for the people. But we will win that ultimate prize when we get it on the ballot, and then we'll let the people decide whether or not they want to do that. So that's my update. Any questions at all? Yes.
I heard somebody today was forwarded to Nina and I on a text message, but they're using the same old scare tactics. They're talking about elimination. If Thomas's bill goes through, elimination of fire and the schools, and it's the same BS and all that. And they had firefighters on there and EMS officials. We're not going to be able to serve everything.
Yeah, we had a meeting with Tom DeWeese. I don't know if everybody knows Tom DeWeese. He's been, working with Agenda 21, for 10 plus years. And what he said, Brian, what you have to remember, fear sells.
That's right.
They want to make us afraid. I did listen to, there was a representative from AFP, Hannah, I believe that was her name. She was speaking at she was giving proponent testimony on 335, and she was supporting the elimination of inside millage. And she said the one question that she's getting, and she got from the legislators also was, well, how are you, Hannah, going to solve the problem if we eliminate the inside millage? How are you going to solve the problem for all of the townships and the village and everything? And she says, and I'm paraphrasing, that there's enough revenue coming in from the state of Ohio. The revenue is not the problem. It's the spending that's the problem. So we're on the right track, and I just say we're just not going to give up at all. Yes, any other question?
It's not a question, but I know there's a group in Cuyahoga County that you know that has your same bill, and they're really marketing it too.
Yeah, let's see. It's the Citizens for Property Tax Reform.
Yeah.
Or that group. Let me explain that. Keith Davey, who is one of our 5 committee members, again, Keith, John, Leonard, myself, and who else am I forgetting? Aline Cross from Portage County. Those are the 5 committee members.
Okay.
But I've got to give a shout out to a young lady from Kirtland. I really do. Without this, it would have never happened. She pushed it over the goal line for us because she's an attorney. She was the only attorney that stepped up to say, "I'll help you." First name is Vesna Barisic. She's got a lot of names, but it's Vesna Barisic from Kirtland. If this thing goes through, her name really should be on it because she's the one that pushed it over the line. Am I right, John, or not? 100%. So I give her a huge shout out.
Saturday, we went to a McFan meeting.
Yes.
McFan is Medina County Friends and Neighbors.
Yeah.
And they were pushing the petitions from all their neighboring counties.
Yes, we've got Sarah Wolf down in Hamilton County, lives in Keach, in Licking County. We got Kirsten Hill in Lorraine, and there's so many names I just can't remember them all, these days. So it is truly a grassroots initiative. When we went down to speak before the ballot board, John was surrounded by all the reporters, and John, they were asking, "Well, it's going to cost you $1 million to get this. Where are you going to get the $1 million?" We said, "No, it's a grassroots effort because it's the people that are doing it." Yes, ma'am.
Brian, is it all the same petition? Do the signatures count all across the different organizations?
Yes, yes. What happens, all of the organizations, we're working with them, and all of the petitions are sent to yours truly. So we will be the central processing spot for all of these petitions. And we've got, I'd like to say that we've got it down pretty well, pat, but I don't know what happens when 500,000 signatures, comes on the front door. That may be a challenge.
But that raises the question is, do you want them as, like, for tax, do you want them as we get them, like lines that get them full? So
Yes, we would prefer that if you get a packet done, that you could send it to us, and either through a P.O. box, or if you're certainly here in Lake County, you call me and I'll come pick them up. That's not a problem. We're willing to. We appreciate you going out and speaking to people. And I went out to Ashtabula. There was somebody that lives. He lives off the grid. But somebody was talking to him. I mean, really off the grid. He says, "I want to sign this. I want to be a circulator." So this is really hitting home with a lot of people. Yes, Mike.
Just an FYI here, Joe Vidmar, who should be noted, he's very aggressive with these. He's hitting the Slovenian community up, and a lot of people who voted against Trump are signing this petition.
Joe Vidmar. Let's give Joe a big shout out. I appreciate it.
Joe Vidmar deserves some recognition.
Please tell him for me. I appreciate it tremendously. I really do. Any other questions? I'm going to turn it over to Nancy. Yes, Robert.
If we don't get to this November's ballot, I would like for us to consider waiting until the following November, because I believe that's a governor's election, and a lot of people will go vote. If we do the mid one in May, next May, that's
100%. I agree, Robert. That November one would probably it's going to cause a little heartburn for some governor candidate.
But that's okay.
Yes, Dan.
It's also the legislature's up for re-election too.
It's gonna cause a lot of heartburn. Randy's selling some antacid pills. Yes, babe.
Just a comment. I was happy to see in your latest article where you said because there were a bunch of people now finally at the 11th hour trying to do something. We've been waiting 28 years for them to do something. All
Right.
these big thinkers, man, they've had plenty of time. So they're flipping out. And they should. We'll figure it out. If they can't figure it out, fine. But I was happy to see you basically say, I don't care what they come up with, we're still putting this thing on the ballot.
Because I think the people deserve the right to vote on it.
Yeah.
Right? Home ownership is the foundation of our freedom and liberty. What don't the legislators understand about that? Here's what I did also find out from Tom DeWeese. He said, Brian, this whole property tax issue, you may not be aware, this is all part of the Agenda 21 that he's been talking about, and we were talking about, 10 years ago. Because what they want is they want no private property ownership, none. Okay, so when you tell that to the average citizen, as Rush Limbaugh said, the low information voters, they want to believe the comforting lies. They don't want to listen to the unpleasant truth. And I'm finding that more and more as I talk to people about signing it, and I'm going, how did they get through life? That's it. Yes.
Yeah, Brian, just.
Hey, nice to see you, Tom. I haven't seen you in a while. Nice to see you.
Good to see you as well. So it's my understanding, I just want to confirm my understanding, that when you collect signatures, they're good for whatever election cycle you want it for. It's not, you're not collecting it now saying I'm going to do it for November and not have it happen and start over again.
Yeah, that's a good question. And we asked that question directly from the Secretary of State. After John spoke at the ballot board, I went up there and at a couple minutes, I was going to ask questions. Secretary of State LaRose says, well, Mr. Massey, we'll talk to you after the meeting on that. So what he did, he sent us to his staff personnel, and I said, if we do not make it for July 2nd, which is the deadline for the November 2025, I'm assuming that we can carry these signatures over to 2026. And they said emphatically, yes.
We can do that.
Good.
So that's a big deal.
Did you get that in writing? Sorry, I don't mean to question it, but.
Did you?
Well, we'll be storming the castle if they don't do that. Yes. It may, because what, and I'll give a shout out to Dante Lewis of the Lake County Board of Elections. He was very, very helpful in answering questions without trying to steer us or give us legal advice. He was just saying what they do. And what happens is, I'm probably going over the 2 minutes here.
What time is Vivek calling in? Or are you calling Vivek?
7:30.
Okay, well, we got to get going here. Where was I? What happens with the Board of Elections, the Secretary of State will send all of the written signature pages to the various Board of Elections, and they have to actually prove that that individual is a registered voter at this particular address. So if they move in the meantime, if they haven't updated the Board of Elections, then the Board of Elections can only go with what they have. Okay, I guess I should stop because we're going to bring our distinguished guest here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. A little extra tonight, after our speaker from America for Prosperity, there will be, he's calling in, or you're calling into them?
We're calling into him.
Vivek Ramaswamy is having a town hall.
Yep, a teletown hall with AFP, our state director, will be speaking with him. You can call and ask questions and stuff like that as well.
So that's this evening here after our speaker. So please stick around. See, get a laugh at $20 a year, don't you? And without further ado, Kyle from American Prosperity.
I thought Dale was going up first.
Hey folks, like she said, my name's Kyle Miller. I'm with Americans for Prosperity. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, good. My wife says I talk too loud, but the last 4 years I was in the military, I was a pre-deployment instructor. So it's my job to recreate a battlefield in a training scenario. So I just yell at everything. So it's all good. I'm like, will you marry me? You know, and it works. I want to say before I say anything about me, however anybody might feel about your petition and your efforts here, I will say this. I see a lot of groups throughout the state. I travel throughout the state. They were saying this is a small showing actually because of the summer or something, and this is actually a very big group. But one problem that I see with groups is that they meet, they get educated, they adjourn, they go home, they come back, they meet, they get educated, they adjourn, they go home, and nobody knows that they met, except for the people that are in that room and the people that are close to them. But as far as the politicians go, as far as the special interest groups or the lobbyists or the nonprofits, as far as all of them go, they never knew they met because they didn't do anything outside of those four walls. So good on you for actually doing an actionable item. Really, truly, I applaud you because not a lot of groups are informed enough to be able to get something like that together. So, however anybody might feel about your petition, your effort, I tell you one thing, they know you're meeting. They know that you're together, right? So, that is how you garner not the love of the opposition, not the hate of the opposition, but the respect of the opposition. So I think that by doing this, you folks are helping gain a lot of respect for your movement and for yourself. So I applaud you on that. Real quick, my background, because I don't think I met some of you, but I actually have met a lot of you. I was in the military for 9 years, did 2 tours over in Afghanistan, 10 months in Bagram, 6 months in Kandahar. When I got out, I opened a business. I bought into a franchise, and we opened that up in Charleston, South Carolina. We had that for about 5 years, had some employees, and then we had a business partner. We sold it to another franchisee owner. Came to Ohio from Charleston, South Carolina, which is it's usually done the opposite way. Over in Charleston, no lie, there's actually Buckeye bars because there's so many Ohioans that come over there. They try to make it like home for them. But this is what happens when you chase girls. So my wife is an Ohioan, and so that's how I wound up over here. I was telling somebody earlier. They say a man is born where his mother is from and is buried where his wife is from. And I was born in Oklahoma where my mom is from, and I'll probably die in Ohio as a Buckeye. So, but I love this. What I'm actually up here today to talk to you about real quick is energy. And I will tell you that energy and healthcare are 2 of the most complicated topics to talk about, and I'm not an expert on either one. We have coalition partners that come in alongside of us, think tanks like the Buckeye Institute. We got Americans for Tax Reform that we rely on for some stuff when it comes to taxes and stuff. But so a lot of the stuff that I'm about to tell you is not me being smart and educated on all the different forms from nuclear energy. So what that means is we have 6 things that we think that if you check all 6 of these in Ohio, when you're making policy around energy, you can't go wrong, right? If you check these 6 boxes, we feel like you can't go wrong. So in the back, we actually partnered up with them and we put our thoughts down on paper. So it's a quick read. It's actually really easily digestible. It's 33 pages, but it lays out where we came from in Ohio on energy and where we're going. Touches a little bit on federal, but honestly, you know, the feds is a nationwide thing. It's really easy to work with the state folks, and so that's our 6-piece framework for how we think that we could do stuff. So I'm gonna go over that, but first I wanted to start off by telling you some things that we fought off successfully last year. There was a policy, House Bill 206, that was introduced here in Ohio by Republicans, supported by Republicans. And what it would do is, it would increase the regulation available through the union. And so they were going to force non-union shops to have to send their folks to union training, pay them for that training. I'm not taking a stance against unions, but what we're saying is that you shouldn't mandate training that's going to increase the cost in order to operate in Ohio, especially, this was during Biden's time, and everybody remembers fuel prices went up during Biden. So this was us hitting ourselves, and it provided perfect smoke and cover, because if the oil and price, if the price of gas went up at the pump, who were you going to blame? You're going to blame Biden. But in reality, there was a bill that was threatening the price going up in Ohio for gas at the pump by just coming in and trying to make one group wealthier over another and sticking their finger on the scale. The director got up, he gave testimony, and we were able to kill the bill. Another bill got introduced, House Bill 76. I think 76 or 79. one of the two. That bill was going to come in under a disguise of trying to make your lives more affordable. So what it was doing is it was going to tack $1.50, not much, onto every Buckeye's bill for electric. And then what they were going to do with that $1.50 is they were going to take that to the electric company, they were going to take that $1.50 and they were going to go buy digital wireless Bluetooth thermostats en masse, and then they were going to use their buying power, thanks to your $1.50, to buy them and at a cheaper rate than what you would be able to buy them at as an individual consumer. Then they were going to sell them back to you at that cheaper rate. They weren't going to make any money. They were just going to sell them back to you. And that is where they wanted you to stop listening. Because then they said, and then you're going to save all this money on your energy. Because your thermostat is so smart, it will turn down when you're not there, turn up when you are there, vice versa, right? But if you kept reading in the bill, what it said is that later on, it was through a piece of mail. One piece of mail would be sent to you. And if you decided to opt out of it, you had to respond to that one piece of mail within 30 days, or else you would automatically be opted into it with no exit plan for 5 years. Then there was no cap on how much they could recoup. And here's the part that almost sounds California-like. They would then use those smart thermostats that they got you to install in your house to help relieve pressure on the grid during high times of usage in the summer. You know how over in California they do rolling blackouts, rolling brownouts, where they say, hey, instead of improving our grid, we're just going to have you sweat just for a little bit. You sweat for 30 minutes, we don't have to improve our grid. Win-win, right? They were going to try that. All this was happening in a bill in Ohio presented by our elected officials. We swatted that one down.
Hallelujah.
So that was last General Assembly. There's been, yes, that's right. Yeah. They did the right thing, they did the right thing. But now we're in a new General Assembly. I think a lot of you know the start of the 2-year General Assembly was January, and there's been a changeover in leadership, there's been a changeover in seats, and consequently there's been a change in culture that we view as positive. So the budget largely, any budget is going to have its flaws, right? You have some wishes and wants, but largely we are satisfied with a lot of the things that we were concerned with in the budget. And one of the things that we're really celebrating is House Bill 15. So House Bill 15 does quite a few things. So House Bill 15 is this General Assembly, to be clear. If you Google those other bills I told you about, you need to go back one General Assembly. So House Bill 15, what that does is it relieves permitting process for getting new power lines and new grid systems installed. It actually puts a 45-day cap, expectation, on the energy site. And so what that does is it means that commercial activity in Ohio, not try to create a lot of bureaucracy and mud, right? The other thing it does is there's a lot of factories and everything that open up, and they use a large amount of energy. So it's more cost effective for them to generate their own energy for themselves, rather than putting a strain on the grid or having to do all the dealings with infrastructure. So they just create it for themselves. All the way up until this got introduced into the budget, they were treated as public utility companies, even though they weren't providing utilities to the public. They were doing it for themselves. So what it did was it increased, because now they're held to the same regulations and red tape and permitting and everything that like AEP would be held to. Say some out of state like in Indiana, to the tune of $450,000 a day, $650 million over the time frame. This repeals that. So this takes away that subsidy that we were providing to other states and to different utilities, and it allows for more of a free market spread. So House Bill 15, if you get a chance, Google that. We're actually big fans of it, and it's a good thing. It's a good culture shift that you're seeing for them to go from, something like House Bill 6 under Larry Householder to something like this. This is a really good shift in Ohio. So let me pull up my phone here. I got some notes here that if whenever a regulation comes up, whether it's introduced by somebody who's pro-union, somebody who's anti-union, a Republican, a Democrat, whoever introduces this, these are the lenses that we would ask for the elected officials in Ohio to look at it through. So one is in-government subsidies for different energies. So how many of you get pretty upset at the fact that green energy was getting all the love under Biden, right? There was 70 billion or 70 million, something like that, 70 billion, trillion, million dollars that was, I forget how he said it, but there was money that was given to create charging stations, right? And there was a funny interview that somebody did. They were in a neighborhood, and they were saying, hey, did you know that under Biden, your neighborhood is actually going to get a $10 million investment? And they were like, that's great. And he's like, what do you think they should use it for? And they're like, more police, or, better this or better that, changing the traffic lights, stuff like that, things that impacted their daily life. And he said, they're going to put in electric charging stations. And one girl goes, what's that going to do? And they were like, why in the world would you do that? So, and then on the same token, whenever you subsidize fossil fuels, like whether it's coal, because your dad was a coal miner, and now and your uncle was a coal miner, now you're a coal miner, so you have a lot of love for coal, maybe, right? And so there's some areas that, that's the main source of income, and then maybe the same thing if you're a driller. But at the end of the day, what we want is for the government to take their finger off the scale and let the market choose where they want to put their money. If you want to spend more money on clean energy, go spend more money on clean energy. If you want to spend more money on fossil fuels, or less money on fossil fuels, spend less money on fossil fuels. And then, whenever those people get that money, they can take it and invest it in trying amount of energy we get supplied, and then therefore increase the amount you're going to have to pay for it, right? Well, what we want is for them to stay out of the business of trying to tell you whether it's clean or not clean, or conservative or not conservative, and let you go out there and choose that, and instead see what's most reliable and most affordable. And again, don't subsidize it. You need to make your product more reliable. You need to make your product more affordable, right? So rather than focus more simplified and streamlined, and there's a role of government to protect consumers to an extent. Well, I think we all agree, right? Like, we want to turn the light on and not get shocked, but at the same time, we need to make it a process that can be navigated easily. Environmental policies should promote well-being. Again, not whether or not this is going to create a carbon footprint of some sort. That's up to them to get better at, by attracting consumers and by getting prices lower, thereby attracting consumers. And one of the things that I kind of failed to say at the beginning is why we need abundant energy. So that's our fifth piece right here, abundant energy. So we want the regulators, instead again of choosing a country, but the idea that we should keep our neighbor from wanting to put a windmill on his property, or for them to put a solar panel farm out. We got to stop hating on one energy source over another and say, who can provide me with the most reliable, affordable energy out there? You're talking to a guy who used to trap furs down in Arkansas before I went in the military. You're talking to a guy who grew up in a steel mill community. I am still a very big proponent of gas-powered stuff because it just felt more powerful, more reliable. But I used an electric branch trimmer the other day. I cut through a branch that was the size of a softball. That's how big around it was. I've been really impressed with some of the products that, like Cobalt, DeWalt, all of them have come out with. How many of you have done construction or do construction? Wireless tools, man. When I used to rafter rat over in Arkansas, up in the attic, I had a extension cord I had to put up there with it. Or my battery would go dead. Man, I got backup batteries, 5H, 6H. I can skill saw with something, or I can drill something. So these things have come a long way, right? And then lastly is promote transparency and competition. So that's another thing that House Bill 15 did that I forgot to mention, is that it requires folks like AEP to stop putting what they call riders on everything. So it was like a rider for replacing this, a rider for, I think, gold-plated something another, piping. There was different riders that they would tack on there. My buddy sent me his electric bill the other day, actually, and he was pointing out that, like, the amount that he paid for the electric he used was actually smaller than the fees that he paid to use the electricity, right? And so this, what it does is it requires them to go with market rates instead of being allowed to tack on all of these other riders to it to increase the cost of the consumer just for their own profits, right? So to sum it up, that book right there, or that 33-page article that we gave you, I think it lays out a really good argument for why we are at this point about energy in America. And honestly, energy usage has stayed flat for decades. And now all at once you have stuff like Bitcoin, blockchain, which is how you like verify Bitcoin, blockchain, AI, electric vehicles. All of these have come on board, if you think about it, really close to one another. And it's put a strain on how much energy we use. I didn't know this until we published the article. Did you know that a Google search uses 10 times less energy than an AI Google search? Anytime you Google something and AI is giving you an answer, it just used 10 times more energy to give you that answer than what it did with just a regular Google search. So it's great, it's improving our lives, but now we got to be able to facilitate that increased usage of energy. And the way that we think to do that is release the floodgates on the American ingenuity that exists amongst us all. You see an opportunity, you see a need, you provide something for it. And those are our six-piece framework there. I'm sure you remembered it all, like I do. But I thought, since I'm not an expert, maybe I could do a pop quiz, do a giveaway. What was one of the bills from last General Assembly that we were able to swat down? 206? January of this year? That's right. Here you go. I like loud people. She was really loud. So, all right. Hey, I appreciate it. I'll be in the back if you guys got any questions. Again, really appreciate what y'all have done out there. Good for you for earning some respect out in the political sphere.
questions now?
What's that? Oh, yeah, sure.
We have time.
Again, I'm not an expert, so you guys will probably teach me a lot here.
Got 17 minutes.
Sure.
Debbie,
go ahead.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about smart meters that they're gonna install in our houses?
I don't know anything about that. My understanding is that it's more of a fight at a local level, but I might be wrong on that. I've heard people say that that's really a choice that like city council makes, but I could be wrong. So I would talk to your city council member. I know there was a lady who's allergic.
Are they good or are they not good? You don't know enough about them.
I think it just depends on like trustworthiness. You know what I mean? So like, you know, I don't blame anybody for saying, look, if it's wireless, then that means it's out there. And if it's out there, that means anybody can nab it. And I think that when you talk about like national security, for example, if I can knock out your electric because it's all wireless, you know, I don't know. It's a good question. But.
Well, I did not.
And they can shut you off remotely.
That's right.
Because I installed the first electronic meters in the city of Cleveland back in #94.
Get them.
Yep, kill me.
Well, if you
but
tell
my-
off because they didn't pay, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah. My question though is in any of this legislation, you talked about reliability and that is a measure of effectiveness for utilities. Is there anything in there to address availability though? Because I worked for both CEI and Cleveland Public Power and another company in between for about 40 years. And all I did was watch, we built one plant, the Perry plant, and I watched every coal power plant be mothballed, shut down, mothballed, and demolished. And there is, most people, I didn't know this until I actually had to go through, but there's gas turbines, but they're even shutting some of those down. Is there anything in the legislation that you're aware of that will address to build some robust generation? And what are we going to do is there anything in the legislation to relieve us in northeastern Ohio based on the carbon limits? We have to have our cars, you know, every year you have to have an e-check on your car because we pollute the whole world, these 7 counties in Ohio. All right? So we have to pay this undue burden if our cars don't measure up.
Yeah.
If you are poor and you have an older car, over 6 years old, you have to pay to pass the e-check.
Yeah.
And that, for somebody who's struggling, that's an extra burden
Yeah.
right there. Which segues into, with these carbon ceilings we have, you're already limiting new industry moving into
Yes.
northeastern
Yeah.
Ohio.
I think that's part of what we're saying as far as regulation. Is that, I imagine that's a local regulation?
No, that's a state
Is it a state?
regulation.
So that's
only about 9 counties.
It's federal.
But 88 are
Yeah,
heavy.
that's from the federal, and Ohio got tapped. There's some other parts of the country that also have to do these e-checks on their car because we polluted New England's air.
Yeah, well, whether it's state or federal, I would say that it's that kind of policy that we're looking to try to get repealed, right? And it's also that kind of thing that we hope competition will come in and provide a way of lowering that without needing the use of like regulation. To answer your question though, I don't know of any of that that's in any of the bills right now, but there's a lot of bills up there that I probably don't know about. But one of the things that we point out in here for availability, because here's the thing, right? If I move out into the back 40, out in the middle of nowhere, availability is going to be a question, right? So there's certain places where you're going to have availability at different levels than other places just by dint of where you choose to live. So one of the things that we're trying to get them to do is promote the transparency of where investments are being made by utility companies for new grids, because you might know this, there's a grid, is it the JEP? JPC, there's a grid that connects us and other states.
Well, you have, God, I've been retired for a few years now. You had PJM.
PJM, that's what it is.
PJM is one of the largest.
So
And we're
PJM
in that
connects us and
footprint.
interlocks us with other states because back in the day, no one state could afford it. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is become more independent with that. So the way that you can know where to open a business, where to maybe develop a neighborhood, whether it's going to be more cost effective, is knowing where the utility companies are going to do that. Right now, the utility companies may only tell select people, so guess what? That real estate's going to be worth more because it's going to be cheaper to develop. So we want them to make it transparent. So that way, you know where to maybe go and start that subdivision, buy that land, start that business, right? So,
And
hoping to increase availability.
You're gonna be around here for more questions, right?
Sure.
Great. Thank you very much to Kyle. He will be here. Don't go anywhere. Thank you. Real quick, we have to have us, Dale Fellows, our Republican Lake County Chairman, and then Linda O'Brien, and then hopefully at 7:30 the phone call from Vivek, correct? And Vivek talked about our power grid when we saw him in person, didn't we?
Yeah,
Was
he
anybody at
addressed
Vivek
it.
when we had him, right?
Yeah, he addressed it, which,
He was
for a
concerned.
politician, he addressed it with a degree of knowledge. Because most politicians are like most people. Their knowledge of electricity extends no further than the light switch on their wall.
But it was a concern of his, I remember that.
Yes, and I applauded him for that.
Okay, and Dale Fellows.
Thanks, Nancy, appreciate it. So, a couple things. America 250. You know what that's all about? Anybody know?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. America 250. 250 years ago, next year will be July 4th. Well, anybody know what was happening right now 250 years ago? 1775? Yeah, why was that army developed? Why did it become?
Concord and Lexington.
Yeah, so fight the British. And guess what happened the day after that June 14th? George Washington became the commander-in-chief, right? Check out my tie here, bud. So, we're going to be doing a lot of things in Lake County for America 250. We've had a committee together that the commissioners, at the urging of the DARs and SARs that I'm a member of, urged them a few years back, and we started in 2023. So we're getting excited about next year. And of course, it doesn't end there. The America 250 goes on for a few more years. But I just wanted to bring your attention, coming up this weekend, on Saturday, June 21st, we're going to have America 250 birthday celebration as a community picnic at the Lake County Historical Society. So they want to make this an annual event for all of Lake County. If you pre-register, you get a free hot dog. How's that? So I've got the QR code and everything on it. Yes, sir.
Is that the one in Painesville?
Correct. Correct. Yeah. So go it's from 4 to 8 on Saturday. Saturday evening, you're going to have barn dance and music and entertainment. I think George Washington might be there. Some other folks like that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Come join us. Come join us.
You have to use this QR code to register?
Well, that's what they have here. You can also probably call or go online to Lake County History Center. In 1800 they landed. What's that?
Did they have property taxes?
I don't think so. But yeah, so you're going to see these cutouts as you come up of General Payne of what we think he looks like, but it's actually going to be a cutout of a bobblehead, because we're going to be giving away bobbleheads at that day starting at noon. So if anyone wants to get a bobblehead of General Payne, come on by. So, and then there's going to be a whole bunch of things next year. The Ohio 250th has every single month next year has a theme, and you can go on America 250 Ohio to check that out. We're going to have the Lake County picnic again on the 20th of June next year. Try and kick it off statewide. They're going to be doing picnics across the state. There's 230 some America 250 organizations in Ohio, so all 88 counties are represented. So we're excited about that. So I just wanted to make sure you guys were all aware of what's going on America 250. If you want to get more information, we do have a Facebook page, America 250 Lake County. I also, real quick, I know I've got a couple minutes. So I know that there was some discussion at your last meeting about the central committee members and things like that and how the central committee operates. And just wanted to set the record straight on a few of those types of things. So I guess I'm part of the local party machine. I think that was what was used. I'm also a moron. That was another one. Part of the Uniparty. So that was another one. It was very interesting. But let me tell you the reality about the Central Committee. So we have 163 precincts in Lake County, and both parties are allowed to have a representative on their Central Committee. This is by Ohio Revised Code. That's how it works. And so we try and have a representative for our party from every one of those precincts. We have most of them filled now. We'd love to fill all the others. So if you're interested in being on the Central Committee, please let me know. I'm always trying to recruit good people that really want to do the job. But it's more than just sitting in a seat and having a title. We're pretty active folks. We want to make sure that you're our representative to each and every voter in your precinct. And that's a big task. And so these are all volunteers. No one gets paid. We are now elected officials. Even though somebody said we are not elected officials. That was actually a court case in Geauga County not that long ago. But we are elected at the primary. We're elected as kind of like an inter-party primary. And so if those folks are elected, you could be one, you could run. We do it every 2 years. Some counties do it every 4 years. I've always been a believer that, hey, if you want to change parties, you want to change people, do it every 2 years. Many folks in this room, I see, are either precinct committee people now or central committee members, kind of interchangeable terms, and or have been in the past. So they know it's a lot of work, especially if you're going to do their job the right way. They spend a lot of money. A lot of them spend a lot of their own money to communicate with all of the voters in their particular precinct. So these are great people who are really dedicated to the cause of the Republican Party. And I go back to those days when there was only one elected Republican countywide office holder. Our clerk of courts was Andy Toten back in the 80s. Now it's just the opposite. So we've done a pretty darn good job of making sure that Republicans get elected in this. Now, of the 18 countywide party countywide office holders, there's only one that's a Democrat, and we'll have that one next year. So that's that in a nutshell is what the Republican Party does. I would love to have, again, as many people involved as possible. Our party platform, we work on that all the time. I was big on starting that, and we've gotten that emphasis now across the state, and we're trying to make sure that all counties have a platform. We have it on our website. You can see it there. The list of central committee members is on the Board of Elections website, as is our bylaws. By law, our bylaws have to be at the Board of Elections, so it's pretty transparent issue. So I just wanted to touch base real quick because I knew some things were said that weren't accurate or truthful at the last meeting, and I just felt it was important for me to say that. So thank you very much. I'll be here. I'm looking forward to hearing Vivek.
Thank you.
One more thing. By the way, we're not broke either. Just the opposite. Somebody said we were broke. It's like, no, I don't think so. Especially after having Vivek here.
That's called a correction. Do we have time for 2 minutes, another 2 minutes?
We've got a minute. So, and it's, yeah.
Would you like to wait to the end, Linda, or would you like to do something now?
I think we probably should wait to the end.
Okay.
He could kick in any moment.
Okay, all right.
All right,
Linda
I'm
O'Brien,
gonna-
as you know, is going to be running for Mentor School Board, so we'll be hearing from her. Her fundraiser tomorrow night.
That's right.
Get those conservatives on the Mentor School Board.
Show up at Pastinas.
Pardon me?
Show up at Pastinas.
Oh,
Yeah,
5 to 8 o'clock.
5 days. Please come.
They need your support.
We will be there.
And don't forget, we're waiting for the phone call. Remember, next month's meeting is July 19th. That's a Saturday. Tom Z. We need people to bring food. Where's Bernadette? Bernadette back there? We'll be asking for, side dishes, right? A bunch of side dishes. We'll be providing the hamburgers and hot dogs. So I'll be asking for somebody to cook. Somebody want to cook that day? Anything that you get from lighter fluid to charcoal, all will be reimbursed. We need someone to cook. We need some side dishes. And so get ready for your phone to ring. It'll be out, what's it called, off of Tiffin Road there in Sugarland. What's it called? I forgot. Where Liberty Camp is.
Oh, Hidden Lake.
Pardon me, Hidden Lake.
Hidden Lake.
Hidden Lake. That's considered Concord?
Leroy
Now, are you at the pavilion side? We're at the pavilion. We're at the pavilion. Yes, it was there last year.
No, it's
And if you haven't heard Tom Z, he's a great speaker. We do not have a meeting in August. So this is our wrap up for the year, so to speak, in July. Before we start like the school year in September. So, July 19th, and we'll be looking for the flyer. Debbie and I will be working on putting the flyer out. Bernadette will be calling you about food, etc. Sure. Yes. Right there. Yeah, we're behind you, Debbie.
All right, yeah.
Okay.
All right,
7:30.
I'm calling it now. If anybody has any questions, please just come talk to me and Kyle, and we will deliver those.
This is Angela Manarino from.
Hey.
We've had her before. You know.
You have.
Just wait 10 years and see what happens.
I'm already finding out now.
We see more of each other in the middle of the night than in the daytime.
We were both awake in the middle of the night last night.
Oh.
Well, usually you don't affect one another. Usually she's out like a light. About 2 o'clock. I woke up and I just could not go back to sleep. It was about 4:30.
Oh, bro.
I hate that donuts, you know, with that big hole in the middle.
Oh, that's the worst, because you don't recover the next day.
Yeah.
It's so weird. I don't have my work phone and see it. Sorry, we're getting it figured out. I don't know why the Bluetooth isn't working. But they're not on yet, so it actually worked out.
Yes, let's go. All right, while they're ready, we're gonna hear from Linda O'Brien.
Good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea.
We don't waste time here. Linda O'Brien, everybody.
On the way here, I had a phone call and scholarshiped in 3 more children for Lake County. I have to tell you, it's happening so often now. We've scholarshiped in a lot, but the good news is our donors have really been behind that. And the men of honor stood up and scholarshiped 5 children with a donation. So, you know, the word is spread. It's a wonderful thing that we could get all that help, and it's a blessing. But when all is said and done, we'll have probably about 80 young youth and time travelers this year. And I'm happy to have the time travelers that we have, because we have so few adults, folks. And so I hope that maybe next time around, next year, during our anniversary year, our celebration, maybe we'll have a few more adults. But it looks like, it sounds like he's on.
He is.
Then I'm gonna be quiet.
I'm just gonna put the microphone up to it.
I'll share a few thoughts to kick this off, and then I'm happy to take questions from yourself and anybody else who's going to be asking questions. So look, we fought an American Revolution in 1776 for the simple principle that the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually make the rules, actually run the government, not unelected bureaucrats, not kings, not self-appointed writers of edicts. It's we the people that create a government that's accountable to us, not the other way around. And the difference between an edict, which existed in Old World England, and a law, which we thought of here in the U.S., was an edict in England was written by fiat. It was written by the stroke of a pen by a king who was not accountable to his people, who could not be voted out of his position. And the reason we fought a revolution was to say that we want to do it differently. That for better or worse, we the people are the ones who actually decide who our lawmakers actually are. That if you're going to make a law that binds me, that stops me from living my life in some way, then the bargain of a democracy is that I at least have the right and responsibility to vote you out when appropriate. That's what America's all about. That's what unites our country across left, right, black, white, urban, rural. It's who we are. So the whole American Constitution was centered on that principle. The unfortunate reality of the modern day is that the people who make most of the laws, they call them rules, but they have the effect of laws. But the people who make most of the rules that bind your behavior, that stop you from behaving the way you might want to as a business or as an individual in your life, are not actually elected lawmakers. They're unelected bureaucrats in 3-letter agencies in Washington, D.C., and at the state level, often in state capitals, including in places like Columbus, Ohio. Viewed as a red state, we are a red state if you look at the electoral map, but we often act like a state of red tape, where there are government regulations written by those bureaucrats that constrain the way businesses are able to grow, that involve permitting timelines that have gotten too far expanded in terms of how long it takes to get approval for a new water treatment facility or the construction of a new natural gas pipeline, in ways that are holding our economy back. And so when I think about one of the great threats to both the civic health of Ohio and the United States of America, as well as the economic health of Ohio and the United States of America, it's the overgrowth of bureaucracy. It's the overgrowth of red tape. It's the overgrowth of overregulation. And I've traveled this state. I was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. I live in Columbus, where I'm raising our two sons, along with my wife, report by today. As I've traveled this state, I've met a lot of small business owners. I've met a lot of individuals who tell me that they suffer from the burden of too much red tape. I haven't met a single person who has said that we need to increase the amount of red tape and regulation we need in our state. So whether you're looking at it from historical civic principles, economic principles, or just principles of pragmatic common sense, we require a new way forward that really downsizes the bureaucracy, that puts a limit on the overgrowth of red tape and overregulation. And that's really what the motivating spirit is of the REINS Act as I see it. Both the REINS Act, the version of it that exists at the federal level, as well as the version that a number of our brave policymakers are aiming to push forward at the state level as well. And I'm honored, Donovan, that you asked me to participate in a conversation with you to talk about what this accomplishes. But to say that if there's a regulation that affects you by a certain amount of money, say $100,000 or more, as an individual or business, it just has to be passed by the lawmakers rather than the unelected bureaucrats. I don't think that's too much to ask. I think it's something that most Ohioans, whether they're on the left or the right, ought to agree with, to say that we might disagree with one another, but let's settle our differences at the ballot box with elected officials through the democratic process, rather than in the back rooms of unelected bureaucracies where most of these rules are made today. And I believe that's something that isn't going to divide us. That's something that's going to unite us. That's who we are. That's what makes us ourselves as Americans. That's what makes this state and this country great. And that's what we're going to revive to catalyze, I hope, a wave of economic growth that we haven't seen in Ohio since the first industrial revolution, and revive the civic health of a state and a nation that was built on the principle of self-governance and accountability. That's not too much to ask of our government. And I think that's what the authors of the REINS Act are asking our state to restore through leadership. So I have much more to say, but Donovan, I know that you're one of the leading voices on this. So thank you again for the invitation to be the guest on this discussion today, and I'm happy to take a number of questions before we wrap my portion of participation in this. Absolutely. Well, I think that sets the table really well for the conversation over the next 20, 30 minutes or so. Folks, this is a live telephone town hall hosted by Americans for Prosperity Ohio, featuring Vivek Ramaswamy. Because it's live, you have the opportunity to engage and ask Mr. Ramaswamy your questions. Press *3 on your phone, *3, and you'll talk to one of our folks who will get you in the queue to bring your question about red tape, regulatory reform, and the REINS Act live on the air. While you're bringing your questions forward, folks, by pressing *3, Vivek, I want to set this up. It just really hit home on the REINS Act. In Ohio, we've done a lot of work. We've inventoried the red tape, right? We know there's 164,000 regulations binding Ohioans. Thanks to the work of Senate President Rob McCauley and State Senator Christina Rogner, we've got the Cut Red Tape Act, right, which lets folks go in and actually point to where the problems are, as well as require a 30% reduction in regulations at the executive level. But the REINS Act, I think, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, is critical because it'll actually stop the growth. We've measured how big the problem is. We started cleaning out the gunk in the engine, but you got to do something to stop that proliferation. Is that right? Talk to me about how the REINS Act would stop that proliferation and put our democratically elected legislators back in the driver's seat of making sure the bureaucracy doesn't grow unchecked. Look, I think that Senators Rogner and McCauley, Senator President McCauley, have done a great job. I think other state senators and other leaders as well have been appropriately vocal on this issue. The way the REINS Act does it in the most foundational sense, there's a lot that it accomplishes through greater transparency, through taking aim at some of these backdoor mechanisms of regulation like so-called guidance documents, which technically aren't binding but effectively treat industry actors as though they're bound by actual fiat. There's a lot in there, but the most foundational way it does so, legislature, in the state's case, if it has an impact above a certain threshold on individuals or businesses. And I don't think that's too much to ask. It's the way our founders envisioned it. It's the way our government's been run for most of our national and state history. And I do think that that is the most potent way to take aim at the culture of government and bureaucratic overreach.
Well, great, I love it. Folks, this is a live telephone channel. We've got folks that have joined us actively here. If you just joined the call, you're with Vivek Ramaswamy Live, hosted by Americans for Prosperity Ohio, talking about red tape reduction and the RAINS Act. We've actually got Loretta on the line here. I won't give away your last name, Loretta, but Loretta's got a great question. Vivek, I'm going to bring Loretta live here now. Loretta, are you on the line with your question?
Yes, I am.
Go for it.
I'm just wondering when we're going to do something about the EPA. It's just unreasonable, their regulations, and they ruin people, they ruin businesses, I could go on, but I get high blood pressure from talking about the EPA. We've got to do something about them.
Must be 39.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And Lord, I'm sorry to hear about some of your experiences, and I want to make sure that you aren't having a regulatory agency that's giving you high blood pressure, right? That contributes to not only the poor health outcomes of individuals, it sounds like, I say that jokingly, but the poor economic health of our region and our country by in many ways bending the knee to often false claims about climate impact or other types of assessments that a regulator isn't even positioned to pass judgment on. And my own view is that that's actually holding our economy back and hurting more people than it's actually helping in so many cases. So you asked me when things are going to change. That was the question you asked, and because this isn't a political call or event, I'll refrain from talking about where I'm spending my daytime hours these days. But I hope and expect that that will change starting in January of 2027. If I'm to give you the most direct answer to your question of when that will change.
Love it. Thank you, Loretta. Thank you, Vivek. Folks, you're on a live telephone town hall. Press *3 if you want to ask your question. We're talking red tape, regulations, RAINS Act. I'm going to jump in here with a question I had for you myself that I think Loretta sort of hints at around the fringes a little bit, but transparency and accountability.
Ask a question.
We want
Just go to Kyle,
safe,
right back
clean
there, and he'll be able to help
right?
you.
We want clean water, clean air, but oftentimes, what have you heard from folks as you've been traveling the state and talking to folks or in the country about the importance of transparency and accountability in government when it comes to things like the RAINS Act and regulatory reform?
There's a hunger for it. I'm telling you, Donovan. I think people are sick and tired of being duped by laws that are often overwrought, designed to be confusing, the loss of transparency. I mean, it's a different subject than the RAINS Act, but it's a good example of it is the issue of property taxation in our state, which has actually become an epidemic problem. And yet, a big part of the reason why is the ballot language is so non-transparent. That's just an example of a different kind of the absence of government transparency. Another area where we lose the government transparency is a lot of the regulations are written outside of public view. Even a lot of these sub-regulatory documents, like those guidance documents I referred to earlier, don't have public transparency in our state even at a level that they do at the federal government. That's, by the way, something that the RAINS Act also strives to fix. And so it's not about left versus right. This is really not about Republican versus Democrat or conservative versus liberal debates. This is about up versus down. This is about transparency versus opacity. And I think most Ohioans and most Americans come down from the side of understanding that, you know what, you may not agree with me on everything, but at least tell me what the laws actually are. Tell me what the rules actually are. Tell me how they're made, and tell me how I can hold accountable the person who made a law that I might disagree with. And if we're able to deliver that, I think that's actually going to unite the state, and I think it's actually going to unite our country. We just have to step up and embrace that spirit of transparency over the quiet corruption of opacity. And when government's opaque, that doesn't enhance trust. That actually erodes public trust. And it's one of the things I worry about unless we fix it.
Absolutely. Well, folks, again, just a reminder, you're on a live telephone town hall. press *3 to ask your questions of Vivek Ramaswamy. We're talking regulations and red tape. I'm actually going to go to Holly. Holly has a question here. Holly, you should be live now. Go for it.
Hi there, Donovan. Here, he was the county cancer, and what Ray has been. He said, "What is the plan of lessen the red tape here on my house?"
Yeah, so Vivek, we've actually got chapters across the state that are dialing in at sort of parties, pizza parties, listening in and kind of taking notes. And I think if I heard Holly correctly there, they want to know what's the plan to reduce red tape? How do you actually get your arms around this behemoth that is the bureaucratic state? Can we hear your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think the number one way to do it is actually to listen to the public directly. I think we should make it easier for members of the public to surface areas and examples of where a regulation they feel has unfairly burdened them. That actually puts the public on an offensive charge. Make it easier for members of the public to challenge the legal or constitutional validity of that regulation. As you said, there are 100,000 plus regulations already active on the book. And so how do we identify which ones have gone too far? How do we surface these areas of red tape? Just ask the people we govern. Now combine that with the REINS Act. If the REINS Act is passed, what it says is that it just has a dollar figure. It's just potentially even in litigation to say that it's having that type of impact. Then the legislature automatically has to codify it. But even without passage of the REINS Act, I think there's a great opportunity for executive leadership in the state to actually say that even though regulations are executive power, we don't want to abuse that executive authority. We actually want to surface and make it easier for individuals to challenge that executive authority, to say that the reason they don't want to comply with the rule isn't just because it burdens them. It's because the rule itself was unlawful. So I think that starts with an executive tone from the top. I think the governor can make a big difference in setting that tone in the state. A state like Indiana passed a REINS Act in 2024. Means the governor signed it into law. In Kentucky, a governor tried to stop it, Andy Beshear, but it got passed into law with an override of his veto anyway. Well, he vetoed it. But the truth of the matter is, I think a chief executive, and at the state level, that's a governor, and at the federal level, that's a president, who truly believes that you should not actually allow these agencies to just with the stroke of a pen write laws that restrict our economy and restrict life. I think that just because it stays that way doesn't mean it has to remain that way going forward. I think it requires a change in culture and a change in tone from the top, and I do believe that's what's required for the future of our state.
You mind if I love that. You mind, we've got Dante on the line, who I think has a question about how our Democrat friends might approach the REINS Act. Vivek, talk to us about that. Is this a bipartisan issue, or is this one of those issues that divides the country and splits people between red and blue? So look, I think it should be a bipartisan issue. Whether it is or not is a different question. It's not one of these questions that actually is widely polled. What do you think of the REINS Act? The answer is most people don't think of the REINS Act. But if you ask most people, do you believe that politicians should be held accountable for the laws they pass? Do you think that elected officials should be the ones who actually write laws, not unelected bureaucrats? I'd venture to guess an overwhelming majority of Americans, regardless of political party, would agree on that principle. And that's something, Donovan, that I found in my travels of this state, through my travels in the country, definitely through my travels in Ohio, is that most people are actually pretty reasonable if you explain to them why you believe what you do. Not 100%, but most people are pretty reasonable. I talked to various people who agree with me and those who don't across this state. But I do believe that basic principle to say that we may disagree on a piece of economic policy or a piece of social policy, and we may even disagree vehemently, but we can still agree that the way it should be enacted into law is by elected lawmakers, not by some person who was never elected to that position in a bureaucracy with zero public transparency, visibility, or accountability writing that rule. And, in so much of our state, and to give really specific examples, we think about the permitting timelines that get in the way of either natural gas pipeline construction or water treatment facilities.
You think about the ways in which there's a culture of whether or not a business knows whether it's going to actually have a particular type of.
In fact, we've got, oddly enough, on a Wednesday night, a beautiful Wednesday night in Ohio, regardless, no matter where you are, we've got nearly 10,000 folks on this call right now, Ohioans who are interested in talking about regulations, red tape, and the REINS Act. Thank you folks for joining us. This is a live telephone town hall. You can press *3 at any time to have your question asked. We've got Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek, I think you got time for maybe one more from the audience here. I've got a Paul from Paul here with a question for you. Paul, I'm bringing you on live now. Go ahead with your question.
I was just wondering how we attack this. Sometimes I think we're going at this the wrong way. I think we have too many laws because we have too many lawmakers. I think most people want less government.
Thank you, Paul. And yeah, what are your thoughts, Vivek, on less government? And then after that, I got one more real quick question I want to throw at you to close us out, which is the time we have with you here today.
Well, I'll answer that question briefly. We are a nation of laws, but we have too many laws. And I think that actually undermines the long-run rule of law when it becomes difficult for ordinary Americans who aren't educated in legal esoteric details to be able to follow those laws. But the bigger problem, the even bigger problem, is that it's not just the laws that were passed by those lawmakers. And you're right, you could make a case that there are too many lawmakers. You could definitely make a case that there are too many laws. But the real problem is that most of the laws that affect you, whether or not you can do something in your life as an individual or business, weren't actually even officially passed as laws. They were passed as rules. And so that's a long way of saying there's a number of issues we're going to have to address, and the REINS Act isn't a panacea to address all of them, but what it will do is at least put a limit on how many of those rules can be passed by unelected bureaucrats. And then I think there's a separate project still ahead of us of making sure that we eliminate redundant, confusing, or overwritten laws that have proliferated like a cancer, both at the level of our state and across our country.
Absolutely. All right, final 60 seconds with you here. I think a lot of folks feel like some of this stuff, REINS Act, red tape, regulation, bureaucracy, government, is just too complicated. And I think the insider folks like to keep it that way, right? Can you help our listeners here today, if they got to explain this to their neighbor in 30 seconds or 60 seconds, at a core level, Vivek, why is the REINS Act, why is red tape reduction such an important piece of policy to be engaged on at this time?
Look, I think that economic growth is what we need now more than ever, both in the United States, but especially in our own home state of Ohio. And the number one thing that holds back small businesses from growing, the number one thing that contributes to our energy potential shortages in this state, which increases the cost of electricity, which increases the cost of gas, is the over-regulation of the economy. And that starts with unelected bureaucrats who can't be voted out writing these regulations into existence. So if you want to grow the economy, if you want to cut red tape, the number one way to do it is to limit the power of bureaucrats to be able to write those rules. How do you do it? By saying that the lawmakers have to pass it instead. That's something that every neighbor at the dinner table should generally agree with. It's so common sense that it might even surprise some people to say, why is it that the lawmakers aren't the ones that you're passing?
Thanks for all you're doing out there to help move Ohio from middle in the Midwest to #1 in the nation. God bless and have a great night, Vivek. We're going to stay on a little while longer, folks. This is an important issue. An interactive telephone town hall. We just heard from Vivek Ramaswamy talking about the importance of the red tape reduction and the REINS Act. And I've got a question for you folks. Question is, do you believe cutting waste in government can help make Ohio's economy stronger? Quick poll question. Do you believe cutting waste in government can help make Ohio's economy stronger? Press 1 if yes, 2 if no, 3 if you're still unsure.
I'm gonna press 1.
If you believe cutting waste in government can help make Ohio's economy stronger, press 1 on your response has been registered if you don't think cutting waste is important, and 3 if you're unsure. But while you're still with us, kind of figuring out what you want to do there, I want to plug an action item for you. You go to buckeyeblueprint.com/reigns. That's buckeyeblueprint.com/REINS. What you'll have the ability to do there is take action to help.
I think we're good.